And he said, "What is this?" He said, "These bolsters, they're so hard that they're made of stone." So anyway, he didn't want to get on his case too much because he knew, so many things that have to be done in time for the opening the following day. So anyway, Prabhupada got back at 10:30 p.m. I gave him his massage, and then he went to sleep for a short while. So when I left Prabhupada's sitting room, the small balcony that overlooked the temple, I heard some noise coming from the temple, so I opened up the curtain a little bit and peered down into the temple room. And it was quite an amazing sight, because there were about 10 or a dozen brahmanas. Sampak Kumar Bhattacharya, he was from South India. He was quite a well-known personality in South India, and I think they were Ramanujacharya followers. But they had come, they were friends with the devotees, and they had come to Hyderabad to help do all the pujas. So this particular night, this is the day before Janmashtami, I heard all this noise. There was kirtan going on, there was, chanting going on like Vedic mantras. So I had to look down into the temple room, and I was surprised to see Lord Jagannath come walking through the door. So they had already got Radha Krishna deities, Radha Madan and Mohan. They'd been installed a couple of years before. And now, on the opening of the temple, they were going to install Gaunitai and Lord Jagannath. So Radha Madan and Mohan were actually 6 feet tall. They were the biggest deities in ISKCON at that time. And so they'd had Gaunitai made to the same proportion. And Lord Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra, they were about 3 feet high, something like that, quite big. So they were just bringing Lord Jagannath, wherever they'd been keeping him, they were bringing him into the temple to get ready for the morning's pujas and proper installation. So when I looked down, there's Lord Jagannath, and the brahmanas are all surrounding him. Our devotees were having an ecstatic kirtan, and one by one they brought Lord Jagannath, Subhadra and Baladev, and they were stood just in front of the deity room, and once they brought them in, then all the devotees started having this ecstatic kirtan. So as they're chanting and dancing, then these South Indian brahmanas, they got very enthusiastic, and they also started chanting and dancing with our devotees. And then at one point I saw there was one fellow, I mean they were like your typical image of a South Indian brahmana. They had big bellies, lots of fancy dhoti and shawl, and big beards. So this fellow, I saw him, he was jumping up and down and dancing with our devotees. As he did that, then our devotees were getting more and more enthusiastic. So they were playing off against each other, and they started jumping up and down. So I saw this rather portly brahmana, and he's there jumping up and down, and then all of a sudden he stopped. And then he put his hands out like this as if he had claws, and he started rolling his head back and forth and going like this as if he was ripping apart something or other. And then after a couple of minutes of that, he suddenly collapsed on the floor. And then his compatriot brahmanas, they came up, "Oh, what's wrong?" And then after another minute, then they got him on his feet, and then he started dancing along with our devotees. So later on I found out this particular brahmana, his special deity was Lord Nrsingadev. So getting involved in the kirtan with our devotees, he got carried away, and his Nrsingadev Bhav started to manifest. So he was making movements as if he was a lion. We didn't say anything. We thought we'd better leave that one. But anyway, it was very nice. The Brahmanas themselves, they were expert in their pujas. Sampat Kumarbhadacharya used to tour all over South India, and he had met Yasodhanandan Swami from ISKCON and Achyutananda, and made good friends with him. And they were, at that time, one of the few groups, Vaishnava groups, that actually accepted ISKCON. There were many other groups that were against us because we were foreigners and, smarter Brahmins. But this group of Brahmanas were very, very nice, very friendly. They very much appreciated what Srila Prabhupada was doing in spreading Krishna consciousness all around the world. So that was the Lord Jagannath's pastime. So the next day was August the 18th, and it was Krishna Janmashtami. So we're all fasting for the full day until midnight. Surprisingly, considering his weak condition, Prabhupada said that he would also observe the full fast. He has also contracted a slight case of dysentery since he arrived there. So Prabhupada's health at that time was going down. He was getting very weak. And on top of that, he had to deal with this dysentery. But still, he up until about 10:30, he completely fasted, 10:30 at night. So in the early morning, Prabhupada rang for me. Although I had supposedly cleaned his rooms, he noticed that his silver lota was tarnished and the balcony was covered with a thick layer of dust. So he mildly reminded me that it was my service to attend to these things. He said that if I didn't do them, then he had to see to them himself. I sheepishly concurred. I had neglected the polishing of the lota because it was a task that was normally taken up by the local temple cleaning crew. So wherever Prabhupada traveled, then devotees would be assigned for the duration of his visit, to take care of the cleaning of his rooms, take care of the flower arrangements. Maybe they were also cooking and, doing his breakfast and lunch. And so Prabhupada, we were used to Prabhupada walking out at sunrise, and he'd go for a 1-hour walk. So whilst he was out on his walk, then generally the ladies or sometimes the men, they would come in and clean up Prabhupada's rooms. So this particular morning, Prabhupada didn't go for his walk. There was so much that had to be done for the opening of the temple that there was nobody assigned to clean Srila Prabhupada's rooms. So then I did it. And I remember I was polishing, I was cleaning everything up. And Prabhupada had a silver lota. And I looked at it, and the thought struck me that I should give this a polish too. And then I thought, no, it's not so bad, I'll leave it. So, as happened many times, you can ask Shruta Kirti about this too, when as soon as Prabhupada walked in the room, he looked straight at the lota. Now, he said, why is this not clean? If you were a little bit lazy or, complacent, Prabhupada would come and he would hit straight on the one weakness that you had. So he immediately said, get it all cleaned up. And this velvet, cloth was hanging it where this door was supposed to be. And again, the same thing, when I swept Prabhupada's room, then there was a small accumulation of dirt. So I thought, well, there's no door on this opening into the temple room. They just put a cloth. So I swept it underneath the cloth, thinking that Prabhupada wouldn't use, this little balcony. And of course, in the evening, that's exactly what he did. So as soon as I opened the curtain, he saw, what is this? Some dirt is here, clean it. So whatever was happening, Prabhupada was always really sharp. Everything came to his attention. So in the early morning, in the early morning, Prabhupada also asked for Mahamsa and Gopal Krishna. So he took his massage early at 8:45 a.m. and he called for Mahamsa and Gopal Krishna. He asked them, why is the temple not decorated with garlands of flowers and strings of mango leaves and banana trees for the opening? He pointed out that although today was such an important occasion, the temple room was bare. So it's another thing that he didn't like. They've not, decorated the temple. They were, again, too busy doing other things, getting set up for the installation, etc. And again, Prabhupada, the first thing that he noticed. So Mahamsa's excuse was that he had been busy with all the other arrangements. Prabhupada was obviously agitated at the lack of proper organization, and he mildly chastised Mahamsa for the dirty and unfinished condition of his quarters. When he had moved in, cement dust was everywhere, and the bathroom was barely working. Prabhupada lightly thumped on the bolsters that flanked his asana, and he complained that they were so hard that they were no better than stones. He said the rooms of the spirit, and then he added to that, he said the rooms of the spiritual master should be ready even before the deity room. So he said this is the higher form of worship. So they were very busy, fixing the temple up and a kitchen and all these things. And for that reason, they had not actually cleaned out Prabhupada's room properly or furnished it nicely. They thought they would do that later on. It was more important that they make sure that every arrangement was made for the deity. So Prabhupada immediately corrected him and said that actually the worship of the spiritual master comes before the worship of the deities. So they went off to try to reorganize things. So thanks to Prabhupada's timely intervention, they were able to arrange suitable decorations just in time for the ceremonies. So at about 11 a.m., Prabhupada went down into the temple, and 15 minutes later, the chief minister, Jalagam Vangal Rao, accompanied with the Minister of Endowments, Sagi Suryanarayan Raju, and Mr. Muttalal Rao, the MP, and other local politicians arrived for the ceremonies. Prabhupada sent the sannyasis to receive them at the front entrance to the property and escort them into the temple room. Then he sat. They then sat the two state ministers on elaborately carved gold leaf chairs to Prabhupada's right, and offered Mr. Motilal Rao accompanying seats to his left. Mahamsa Swami acted as the MC, announcing who each of the visitors were to the crowd of about 400 or 500 people. Prabhupada then asked the chief minister to speak. So Yasodhanandan Swami and not Chutananda, there was another sannyasi there, it'll come to me. Mahamsa. So they had come to see Prabhupada the day before to discuss the details of the installation, and they were kind of halfway through Chatumasya, so they'd grown their beards a bit. And when Prabhupada saw them, he called them into his room and he told them, shave up. He said, this is much more important than any observance of Chatumasya. He said, it's not good that you look so dirty and scruffy with these beards. So they immediately went off and had their heads and faces shaved, so they looked like Pukka Brahmins, at least clean. Prabhupada did not like beards unless it was grown for a particular purpose, like the 4 months of Chatumasya. If a person wanted to observe the Chatumasya vows, then all right, but Prabhupada said that doesn't just mean you grow your hair. He said there are so many strictures on Chatumasya, you have to follow them all, not that you just grow a beard. Oh, I'm observing Chatumasya. Anyway, so they were running around, frantically speaking. Prabhupada went down, the chief minister came, and Mahamsa was the MC, so he asked the chief minister to speak. So stepping up to the microphone, the chief minister welcomed the crowd of onlookers to the temple, which he described as a gorgeous ashram. He told the attentive audience, "It is not far from the truth to say that there is no place like this in our world." He lauded ISKCON and glorified Srila Prabhupada personally for reviving temple construction, temple worship, Gita Parayan, and for disseminating Vedic culture to what he called the advanced countries like the USA. He spoke for about 10 minutes, finishing with a request that everybody take full advantage of the facilities that ISKCON is providing. So he was very, very happy. He took it that Vedic culture is being spread and sustained now by Srila Prabhupada. He gave that recognition. The Prabhupada was very pleased because he knew that if he could get the local government interested, then there would be a chance they would help us to develop the temple or other areas. So then after the CM spoke, Mr. Raju spoke, followed by Muchalal Rao. Now this Surya Narayan Raju, he was the Minister for Endowments. What that meant was that sometime previously, the Tirupati temple and all the temples in Andhra Pradesh had been taken over by the government. And so they were kind of like what we call nationalized. The individual ownerships were cancelled, and then it was all under the control of the government. And the reason for that was, of course, there was crores and crores of rupees that were coming and being given at Tirupati to Balaji. So the government, they concocted some story that the trustees of the Tirupati temple were not behaving properly and they were not spending the money properly. So on that excuse, they nationalized the whole, temple scene in Andhra Pradesh so they could get their hands on the money that was going, to the deities. So Mr. Rao, he was the person who was in charge of the endowments. So that meant he had to figure out how to use all this money, millions and millions of rupees, in a proper way. He was a nice man, actually. He was pious, but he had no idea about deity worship, about how to look after Tirupati and all the money that was coming in. So he did actually have several meetings with Srila Prabhupada on this visit to ask him, what should we do with all this money? What is the proper way? And Prabhupada's reply to that was that you should use this to set up a Varnashram system. And he said that they should be very careful not to spend even 1 rupee of Balaji's money on anything other than the support for the deities and the temples. So they listened very attentively, and I think a day or two after the opening of the temple, Mr. Raju invited 7 of the government ministers, like the main Andhra Pradesh government. So they were all invited to Mr. Raju's house. About 7 ministers came, And then Prabhupada lectured them on how to properly look after Balaji and the funds that were being given to him. So it looked like they would do something to help us, but in the end they didn't. But anyway. So Mr. Raju then spoke, followed by Muchal Rao. Mr. Rao addressed the crowd in Hindi, giving another strong personal endorsement for Prabhupada's work. He said, "We are very fortunate that Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, a very elevated personality, has come here to open this temple with the generous donations of so many generous people, especially Mr. G. Pullareddy." So G. Pullareddy, he had some shops in Hyderabad, so he had this piece of vacant land, and when Prabhupada had gone to Hyderabad, I think in 72 or 73, around that time, then Mr. Pullareddy offered this land to ISKCON and requested that we build a temple there. So Prabhupada took it up. He was very happy. Mr. G. Pullareddy was one of the guests also. And the minister said, if he had not given this place, we could not have this temple. Therefore, I am indebted to all those people who have helped to construct this temple. Declaring himself to be an avid reader of Bhagavad Gita, he enthusiastically lectured the crowd. At times, he sounded like an apocalyptic fundamentalist Christian preacher. You know, you get those guys going, you know, ranting, religious leaders. So he was getting very invigorated, telling the crowd, you have to support this temple, you should read Bhagavad Gita every day, this is very important. So that was good, that was, you know, one of the main functionaries there. So therefore he said, I am indebted to all of these people who have helped this temple. Declaring himself an avid reader of Bhagavad Gita, he enthusiastically lectured the crowd, at times sounding like a fundamentalist preacher, as he warned the audience to devote their time to hearing the words of great saintly persons before impending destruction of pralaya overtook India. He said, we should meditate on these words, not that we hear from one ear and let it out the other. That is not punya. Just like the chief minister has said, that we Indians, we are taking to their Western way of life, and they're taking ours. So he said that we are losing our intelligence. He's talking to his fellow Indians. He said, I really feel that these days a pralaya is coming, means destruction. It is very, very bad, dharma pralaya. Therefore I request you that when a saintly person comes to preach amongst us, we should take his teachings to our hearts and do some service to the humanity. And we should not deviate from Bhakti Marg. Bhakti, he said, has become a joke nowadays, means in India. He said, if I started wearing saffron cloth or chanting Hare Krishna, the whole world would laugh at me. Therefore, please do not make fun of Bhakti and do not make fun of God. This is very sinful. When someone preaches about the absolute truth, both the speaker and the listener get the benefit. In the same way, when someone blasphemes, both the speaker and the listener get bad reactions, sinful reactions. So, on this auspicious day, I congratulate the Chief Minister and everybody who has come here today, and also with special congratulations to Swamiji. I have a special respect for Swamiji. So many ministers, chief ministers come and go, but their words will remain with us. And in the same way, these saintly persons preaching will always remain with us, and their name will always remain in the hearts of the people. All the good deeds that they have done will remain with us. So, very nice endorsement. I mean, he sounded like a full-on ISKCON devotee. Yeah. And He said, I have some special relationship with the Swamiji. I've been watching him with all of his Western disciples. One of his disciples came and said to me, I have come from sinful Bhumi, the West, to speak to the people in India of Punya Bhumi. He said, I was completely overwhelmed. So please try to understand Bhagavad Gita and read it every day. We are expert in singing cinema songs. I also do that. I also play the sitar. But I always read the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm very proud of it. Please therefore start reading Bhagavad Gita. You all just come and have a darshan and offer your respects. That is not good enough. But also you try to elevate yourself more and more. Just as one goes to Tirupati and chants Jai Govinda, 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 and then they leave. But you should become more devoted. So I'm glad that the Swamiji has graced my house yesterday. He always comes whenever he comes to Hyderabad. And I thank everyone who has come to attend this function. A lot more people should come. So he had seen that things were getting more and more westernized. They were losing their culture. So he was telling people, don't give up your culture. I'll give an example. A few years back, I was visiting our Delhi temple. So next door is this Baha'i temple. It looks like a half-opened lotus flower. So as I was walking along, because I was in my kurta and dhoti, so there was a small group, young people, about 20, 25 years old, 3 or 4 men and a few ladies were with them. They were out walking in the grounds. So as they walked past me, I was with somebody, I can't remember who it was, but as I walked past, they all started laughing. So I looked at them, and then, they weren't being impolite, but there was a kind of an irony that struck them. One of them said that, well, we're looking, he said that you're a Westerner, why are you wearing Indian clothes? So I said, well, you're Indian, why are you wearing Western clothes? Because we're in India. And then they realized that, the irony of that, they all burst out laughing. But that's the fact. In India, people prefer Western culture. They've been taken over. So Prabhupada's trying to revive Vedic culture. So, so after Mr. Raju spoke, Prabhupada delivered his keynote address. He spoke on the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 7th chapter, verse 6. He told his audience that the literary contribution of Vyasadeva is not possible for anyone else to repeat in any age, and that of all the literatures presented by Vyasadeva, the Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless Purana, free of any cheating. In it, Bhakti is established as the stage beyond liberation, although some may claim otherwise. Prabhupada emphasized that that is not the opinion of Shastra. He told the crowd, it is a misconception that Bhakti is a help towards moksha. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma. Without Brahman realization, Aham Brahmasmi, there cannot be any jubilation or prasanatma. He said that because Bhakti is enacted on the liberated platform, the Krishna consciousness movement may therefore be a little difficult to understand. He quoted Bhagavad Gita 7:3 and said, we understand specifically, Krishna was born in Mathura, he is the son of Vasudeva, and so on and so on. But one has to understand Krishna, Tattva, in truth. And Krishna says, Janma kama chame divyam evam yo veti chakvata. Chakvadema punar janma nayatin. If you understand simply Krishna, Tattva, then immediately you become liberated. So Mr. Rao had stressed that everybody should read the Bhagavad Gita, and so did Srila Prabhupada. He said, we are missing our own culture, that we do not take very much care to understand the Bhagavad Gita as it is. We make out our wrong interpretation and spoil the whole thing. So these habits should be stopped, otherwise our culture is almost already lost. So then this Bharatiya culture, it is very important culture. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said, para upakar. The Bharat Bhumi is meant for doing good to others. Bharat Bhumi is not meant for exploiting others. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, because every Indian is born Krishna conscious. That's interesting, another interesting sentence. Every Indian is born Krishna conscious. Because it doesn't mean the most elevated stage, but simply by being born and living in India, you chant the holy names somehow or another. Everything is Krishna, you know. I remember when I first came to India, I was surprised to see the Krishna bicycle store, the Krishna this, the Krishna that. You know, we revere the holy names as our life and soul. But although people in India have kind of fallen from that standard, still you can't avoid Krishna's name. It's here, there, and everywhere. So, therefore, Prabhupada is saying that every Indian is born Krishna conscious, and naturally he has got an instinct. So do not destroy it. This is our request. If we simply introduce this Krishna consciousness movement, then you'll very soon see that the face of the whole of India will be different. Because he was following Krishna's direction, he said that the Krishna consciousness was successfully spreading all over the world, and he modestly referred to his hard labor of the last 11 years as only a teeny and humble attempt. So Prabhupada's making reference that I'm trying to get help, but no one comes. No one is giving any help, so I'm forced to do it by myself. But still, he said, things are going on and improving. So I attended many lectures that Prabhupada gave in India. I traveled with him in India for about a year or so, and practically every few days there would be some pandal or some meeting. And Prabhupada would always push this point. You are Indians. You were born in Punya Bhumi. You were born in the land of Krishna. So you must take this Krishna consciousness up. And he would sometimes give long, long lectures just to tell people, that don't give up your culture. You remain with your Krishna conscious culture. So as he repeatedly does, he urged one and all to participate in their culture in the spirit of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So if one man can do it, so if you say some success, then why not all of us? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given power of attorney to all Indians. Bharata Bhumite Hoila Manusha Jammaja. He is speaking to the Manusha, not to the cats and dogs. First of all, try to understand what is the purpose of life. That is called Janma Sartaka. So go. Everywhere there is a good demand for Krishna consciousness. So everybody should be prepared. Everyone should understand the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, it's not possible for everyone to go, but still, if one understands that is also Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's order, Amara Gaya Guru Hanatari Desh, he says, every one of you become a guru. Even though you are not very much educated or not born of a very high family, you simply Yaridaka Tarikaha Krishna Upadesh. That's all. Do not adulterate it. But as Krishna says, so you say, and you become a guru. Again, the same, these few instructions were repeated many, many times. Become a guru yourself. Go out. Spread Krishna consciousness. Introduce people to the proper culture and spirituality. So I have tried that. I have tried to follow Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instruction, and I am presenting Bhagavad Gita as it is. There's no magic, there's no jugglery, and people are taking. So if you do that, everyone will be happy. The world will be happy. And India's glory will be spread all over the world. Thank you very much. So those of you that have been to Delhi, you'll see on the exhibition building that they've got there in the big Delhi temple that it's called the Glory of India. Yeah, the Glory of India project. So here Prabhupada's using the same phrase. If you just go out and preach Krishna consciousness, even if you don't know much, or you have to stay at home, but preach somehow or another, that will be the glory of India. So Prabhupada's lecture finished, and then he dismounted the Vyasasan and went with his guests to the front of the deity room for the first darshan and arati. The temple room was packed with eager visitors, all pushing and straining so as not to miss the sight of their lordships. So we waited, and we waited. Our pujaris were struggling to get everything ready, but finally, with the help of Sampak Kumar Bhattacharya and his fellow Bangalorean brahmanas, they opened the doors at 12:15 p.m. With a great cheer, the crowd surged forward. The priests blew 3 long blasts on their conches, announcing the imminent appearance of the Supreme Lord and his eternal associates. Then the curtains opened to reveal the splendorous forms of their lordships, Sri Sri Radhamadana Mohan, Sri Sri Gaurnitai, and Sri Sri Jagannath Baladev and Subhadra. All of them were beautifully dressed, and the crowd pressed forward yet again while our devotees chanted in an ecstatic kirtan. Srila Prabhupada, appearing well satisfied with the ceremonies, remained with his guests at the front until the end of the arati. Then the chief minister and other guests took their leave, and Prabhupada returned to his rooms, where he stayed for the rest of the day. So that was the main part of the ceremonies. They got the deities installed, they had the first arati, and then Prabhupada took a little rest. The temple was closed for the afternoon whilst the devotees cleaned up. But the temple room remained crowded throughout the entire afternoon as people patiently received packets of prasadam and awaited the next arati. So people who come at midday, they stayed there the whole afternoon and waited for the next arati at 5:30 p.m. Most of the devotees went out on a Harinam parade through the city. An elephant led the procession, carrying the small Gaurnitai deities. Even when the parade left, the temple stayed 3/4 full, but there was no program to keep the guests engaged. So they all went out. If you have seen their pictures from 1975, the year before when the Vrindavan temple was opened, they also had an elephant in the procession. So they did the same thing here in Hyderabad. So the parade returned at 6:45 p.m. and after another energetic arati, the devotees asked the crowd to sit while they chanted bhajans. During the chanting, Mahamsa came to Prabhupada's room and requested him to sit out on the balcony and benedict the crowd with his darshan. So it's to set that little balcony that I described before. So Prabhupada was happy to oblige. The balcony itself was only about this wide. I was a little afraid that, Prabhupada might totter over the edge or something. It was kind of up in the wall there, and there was no door, just this cloth, and practically no room. There was just enough room for Prabhupada to sit cross-legged and look down into the temple room. So he obliged to do that. We hastily set up a padded cotton mattress on the little overhang, and Prabhupada sat there high up in the temple room, chanting along with the devotees and encouraging the crowd to join in. The fact that the balcony still lacked a railing turned out to be an advantage, because His divine grace could easily be seen by all. He stayed out there for about 20 minutes and then threw some flowers down into the crowd. When the bhajan ended, Prabhupada returned inside, and the enthralled audience was then shown the film Spiritual Frontier. So in 75 or 76, I think 76, Yadubara and his wife Vishaka, they made this film called Spiritual Frontier. Has anybody seen that? See, that's the problem with, well, Siddhanta, Bhakti Siddhanta Singh. But this is the problem with the electronic media. Yeah, you get something wonderful done, but then after a year or a couple of years, then it becomes defunct and you have to redo it all over again. We're only one generation, from when this film Spiritual Frontier was put out, but not a single one of the devotees has seen it. Anyway, it was a very nice film. It was about New Vrindavan, simple living and high thinking, and Prabhupada liked it very much. They had like a film premiere, an opening showing when Prabhupada was in Los Angeles in June of 76. So all the devotees had packed the temple room in Los Angeles. Prabhupada was sitting on his Vyasasana, so the deities were to his left. The projection of the film was directly in front of him on the opposite wall. And Prabhupada was watching it very intently. He was very pleased with the film. And at one point they showed some cooking going on. And I think Kirtanananda was cooking puris and making some crab apple chutney. So I was watching Prabhupada when this image came up in the film. They're cooking and there's this puri floating in ghee in a wok. And when that came up on the screen, I saw Prabhupada. He looked at it, his eyes opened, and then he reached out as if he was going to get the puri and brought it to his mouth. So it was very funny. I don't know whether anybody else saw it, but I was... Did you see that? It was really funny. Anyway, so now they brought the film to India. They showed it to the crowd at the opening of the temple. Everybody was very impressed. So then in the late evening, Prabhupada asked Palika to cook Ekadasi Prasadam, because it's Janmashtami, so we took Ekadasi Prasadam. She served it to him at around 10:45 p.m. We were all amazed that Prabhupada had managed to complete the whole fast for the whole day. So he took his prasadam and then he took his rest at 11:15 p.m. Outside, it began to pour with rain. So Prabhupada walked up to the window of his room. He looked out. It was raining fairly heavily. And he said that this is a good sign. He said that means that everything is, everything has been a success. It was difficult for him, however, to rest because of the noise that was coming up from the huge crowd that had gathered in the temple room for the midnight arati. As it turned out, the arati did not actually take place until 12:40 a.m. But everybody waited patiently and stayed on for the feast afterwards. So they got everything ready. Everybody that came, they got prasadam. And also there was like a small packets of prasadam handed out. And then those that could fit in the temple room, they were fed as we normally do, like in our big kitchens here. So that was Janmashtami Day, 1976. And of course the next day was Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja. So it's 25 to 7. I'm due, Jananivas, is he coming or not? I think I was supposed to speak from 6:30 to 7:30. Jananivas is supposed to speak from 7:30 to 8:30. You can just see if he's there. Any quick questions whilst we're waiting for Jananivas? No questions? Yes, back to Sauri. I couldn't hear you. I can't hear a word because of the fans and I'm deaf. Prabhupada said that I want one of those. Okay. When the Puri came up on the screen, then Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhu was saying that Prabhupada actually commented that I want one of those. So, very nice. Any questions? All right. I'm not going to go further because it's Vyasa Pujas tomorrow and I was going to speak again something from those pastimes. Okay, well, is he coming or not? I know some of you may not know, but Jananivas Prabhu has been having some weakness. He's got a little bit of a fever, and he's had some problems with his hands kind of freezing up a little. So, nevertheless, here he is. Are you coming over here this way, Prabhu? You're speaking, right? I can't hear. What did you say? You have to speak really loudly, I'm deaf. Yes, I'm finished. Yeah. All right, thank you all very much. Sri Krishna Janmashtami ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.